Let me hit you with a truth most people never hear. 99% of seniors have no idea that the food on their plate could be the difference between crystal clear vision or slowly going blind. That's right, losing your eyesight after 60 isn't just old age. It's not some fate you have to accept. It's often the result of years of hidden damage that the right foods could actually help prevent. Now, some folks believe that glasses, stronger prescriptions, or even surgery are the only way to protect their eyesight. Others will tell you diet doesn't matter at all. But after decades as a physician working with older adults, I can tell you this. The science is clear. The choices you make in the kitchen can be just as powerful as anything that happens in a doctor's office. And when it comes to your eyes, leafy greens are the unsung heroes almost nobody is talking about. Here's the shocking part. These aren't rare or expensive foods. They're right there in your grocery store. Kale, spinach, collard greens, Swiss chard, arugula, romaine. Each one packs unique compounds that can slow down or even shield you from the biggest threats to your vision after 60. Macular degeneration, cataracts, glaucoma, and the silent blood vessel damage caused by high blood pressure. Imagine this. Choosing the right greens could literally decide whether you're still reading your grandchild's birthday card 10 years from now, or struggling to make out the words through a blur. And I promise you the last one on this list will surprise you. It's a green most people think of as nothing more than a boring salad base, but science says it may quietly protect your eyes more than you realize. But before we dive into the 6 leafy greens that can keep your vision sharp after 60, do me a quick favor. Tap that like button, share this video with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Every click helps us bring you more science-based, life-changing health tips you won't hear anywhere else. All right, let's get started. Because the very first leafy green on this list is more powerful for your eyes than most people ever imagined. Why eye health declines after 60. Before we get into the list of greens, let's talk about why vision tends to decline after age 60. There are 3 main culprits, and understanding them is the first step toward protecting your eyesight. The first is oxidative stress. Every single day your eyes are exposed to sunlight, UV rays, blue light from screens, and even environmental toxins like smoke and air pollution. Over time, these exposures create free radicals, tiny unstable molecules that chip away at delicate eye tissue. The retina, which is responsible for sharp central vision, is especially vulnerable. Research from the National Eye Institute has shown that oxidative damage is one of the earliest triggers for both cataracts and macular degeneration. In other words, this isn't just about getting older. It's about decades of wear and tear building up until the damage becomes noticeable. The second is macular degeneration, often referred to as AMD. The macula is the small but vital part of the retina that allows you to read fine print, recognize faces, and enjoy the details of the world around you. After 60, the risk of AMD rises dramatically. According to the CDC, more than 11 million Americans are currently living with it, and that number is expected to double by 2050. I've seen patients who felt fine one year, and by the next they were struggling to make out street signs or even the expressions on their loved ones' faces. AMD rarely causes total blindness, but losing central vision can make even simple tasks frustrating. This is where diet comes into play. The landmark ARDS-2 study showed that people with higher intakes of lutein and zeaxanthin, 2 carotenoids found in leafy greens, had a 25% lower risk of progressing to advanced AMD. Think about that. A quarter less risk just by feeding your eyes the nutrients they need. The third culprit is cataracts. By the age of 75, more than half of Americans will develop them. Cataracts start as a gradual clouding of the eye's lens, leading to blurred vision, difficulty with glare, and fading colors. Left unchecked, they can steal the clarity and contrast that make everyday life enjoyable. Large studies, including one from Harvard that followed over 77,000 women, have found that those with the highest intake of lutein and zeaxanthin had a 22% lower risk of needing cataract surgery. That's a powerful reminder that what you eat today can directly affect whether you'll need surgery tomorrow. So what does all of this mean for you? It means that while your eyes naturally face challenges as you age, you are not powerless. Leafy greens like kale, spinach, collards, and arugula are rich in lutein and zeaxanthin. These compounds act like natural sunglasses, filtering out harmful blue light, neutralizing free radicals, and protecting the cells that keep your vision sharp. It's easy to dismiss food as just fuel, but for your eyes, it's also medicine. The real question is, are you giving your eyes the nourishment they need to stay clear and strong after 60? Leafy green number 1, kale, the macula's best friend. Let's begin with the king of leafy greens, kale. I know some of you may already be rolling your eyes. Kale has been labeled a superfood so many times that the word almost feels like marketing. But there's a reason it earned that reputation. When it comes to protecting the aging eye, kale is in a league of its own. Kale is one of the most concentrated sources of lutein and zeaxanthin, two carotenoids that act as natural bodyguards for your retina. These compounds gather in the macula, the part of the eye responsible for sharp central vision, and work like built-in sunglasses, filtering harmful blue light and neutralizing free radicals. Just 1 cup of cooked kale delivers over 20 milligrams of lutein. Compare that to the average senior in the U.S., who barely gets 2 milligrams a day. That's a tenfold difference, enough to mean the difference between preserving central vision or watching it slip away. And kale doesn't stop at lutein. It comes loaded with vitamin K, which strengthens bones and supports flexible blood vessels. It provides vitamin C, a powerful antioxidant linked to slower cataract development. And it offers dietary fiber, which nourishes the gut microbiome. And yes, your gut health and eye health are more connected than most people realize. Chronic inflammation in the gut can fuel inflammation in the eyes. By eating kale, you're not just feeding your stomach, you're calming the fire that threatens your vision. Now let me share a story from my own practice. A patient of mine, Linda, age 72, came to see me with a deep concern. Her mother had lost central vision in her late 70s from macular degeneration, and Linda was terrified she was headed down the same path. But she confessed something with a laugh. "Doc, I can't stand kale. It tastes like grass." That's a sentiment I've heard more times than I can count, so we worked together to make it practical. She blended kale into fruit smoothies where the sweetness of pineapple and banana masked the bitterness. She learned to saute it quickly with garlic and olive oil or bake it into crispy chips with a pinch of sea salt. Within 6 months, she not only felt more energetic, but her eye exam revealed something remarkable. Her macular pigment density was stronger. That's a measurable sign of protection against AMD. Food had done what no pill had offered her yet. Linda's story isn't unique. Studies back it up. Researchers at the University of Georgia found that higher intake of kale and spinach directly improved visual performance, especially contrast sensitivity. That's your ability to see fine details against a background, like reading black letters on a gray page. Another study published in JAMA Ophthalmology showed that people who consumed the most lutein and zeaxanthin had a 43% lower risk of developing advanced macular degeneration. Those are not small numbers, they're life-changing differences. And here's the beauty of it. Kale is accessible, affordable, and versatile. You don't need to choke down raw kale salads to get the benefits. Lightly steaming it makes it sweeter and easier to digest, and it actually boosts the bioavailability of lutein. Pairing it with a little healthy fat, like olive oil, avocado, or nuts, helps your body absorb those carotenoids even more efficiently. So let me ask you this. If you knew that a few handfuls of kale each week could help preserve your ability to read, drive, or see the faces of your loved ones clearly, wouldn't it be worth giving it another try? Sometimes the strongest medicine isn't in a prescription bottle. It's waiting for you in the produce aisle. Leafy green number 2, spinach, the gentle protector. Spinach is often seen as the softer cousin of kale, with a milder flavor and far more versatility, which makes it easy to slip into almost any meal. Like kale, it provides lutein and zeaxanthin, the two carotenoids that protect the macula by filtering blue light and fighting oxidative damage, though in slightly smaller amounts. What makes spinach stand out is its natural nitrates, compounds that improve circulation. Better blood flow means more oxygen and nutrients reach the eyes, which helps reduce fatigue, dryness, and strain. Research supports this connection. A study in the Journal of Ophthalmology found that older adults who ate spinach at least 3 times a week had significantly lower rates of cataracts than those who rarely consumed leafy greens. Other studies also show that dietary nitrates from spinach improve vascular health, which benefits the small, delicate blood vessels in the retina. I remember a patient named George, a 69-year-old retired carpenter, who came to me complaining that his eyes felt constantly tired, especially after reading. Instead of immediately adjusting his prescription, we tried something simple, adding 1 cup of steamed spinach to his dinner a few nights a week. When he returned a few months later, he told me the headaches had eased, the strain was less noticeable, and his night vision was clearer. Another patient, Carol, age 71, struggled with dry eyes that made driving uncomfortable. By blending spinach into her morning smoothies with apples and yogurt, she not only found relief from irritation, but also improved her cholesterol levels. Spinach is not a miracle cure, but it provides the raw materials your eyes need to function better. And it's easy to enjoy whether lightly sautéed, tossed into salads, stirred into soups, or blended into drinks. It adapts to your taste. The question is simple. If a few servings of spinach each week could lower your risk of cataracts, support your circulation, and ease eye strain, why wouldn't you make it part of your routine? Small, consistent changes often make the biggest difference, and spinach proves that a gentle approach can still offer powerful protection. Leafy green number 3, collard greens, the southern secret. Collard greens have long been a staple in southern kitchens, often slow-cooked with smoked meats and served at family gatherings. Beyond tradition, they are nutritional powerhouses that offer real protection for aging eyes. Like kale, collards are rich in lutein, but what makes them unique is their high vitamin A content. Vitamin A is essential for retinal function and especially for night vision. Without enough of it, the eyes struggle to adjust to darkness, a condition doctors call night blindness. I remember a 74-year-old patient named Raymond, a retired bus driver, who came to me worried that night driving had become almost impossible. He described it as staring into fog, unable to see the lane markings, and overwhelmed by glare from headlights. His eye exam showed early cataracts, but his blood work revealed low vitamin A levels as well. Instead of relying only on medication, I encouraged him to add collard greens to his meals, but in a lighter, healthier way, sautéed with olive oil and onions rather than cooked down with fatty meats. 3 months later, Raymond reported that his night vision had improved noticeably, and more importantly, he felt confident behind the wheel again. Research supports what I've seen in practice. The National Institutes of Health recognizes vitamin A deficiency as a key cause of impaired dark adaptation in older adults. And a study published in the Archives of Ophthalmology showed that people with higher intakes of vitamin A and carotenoids had lower risks of night blindness and age-related vision problems. I've had other patients, like a woman in her late 60s, who struggled to read menus in dimly lit restaurants, benefit in similar ways after regularly adding collard greens to her diet. Within weeks, she found herself less dependent on her phone's flashlight to see clearly. Collard greens also deliver vitamin K, folate, and calcium, which strengthen bones and improve circulation, providing health benefits far beyond the eyes. So I often ask my patients, if one simple vegetable can improve night vision, support stronger bones, and promote heart health, why wouldn't you make it a regular part of your meals? Collard greens may be a southern tradition, but their ability to protect vision and overall health makes them a valuable ally for anyone looking to stay independent and sharp after 60. Leafy green number 4, Swiss chard, the blood flow booster. Swiss chard is one of the most striking leafy greens with its colorful stems in shades of red, yellow, and orange. That beauty is more than skin deep. It signals the presence of powerful phytonutrients that fight inflammation and oxidative stress. What sets Swiss chard apart, however, is its rich supply of magnesium and potassium, 2 minerals that play a vital role in regulating blood pressure. This is critical for eye health because high blood pressure, often called the silent killer, can damage the delicate blood vessels in the retina and lead to hypertensive retinopathy, a condition that quietly undermines vision over time. According to the CDC, nearly half of Americans over 60 live with high blood pressure, many without even realizing it. That means countless older adults are unknowingly placing their vision at risk. Research published in the American Journal of Hypertension shows that increasing dietary potassium can help reduce blood pressure and protect vascular health, including the tiny vessels that nourish the eyes. By eating potassium-rich foods like Swiss chard, you're not just protecting your heart, you're also protecting your sight. I remember a patient named Helen, a 67-year-old grandmother who loved gardening. During a routine eye exam, her doctor noticed early signs of high blood pressure in her retina, even before her primary physician had caught it. We worked together to add Swiss chard into her meals twice a week, sometimes sautéed with olive oil, other times stirred into soups. Within 6 months, her blood pressure dropped by 12 points, and her eye exams showed measurable improvement. She felt more energetic and reassured, knowing that such a simple dietary change could make such a difference. I've seen similar results in others. A man in his 70s whose diet was heavy in salty foods began adding Swiss chard salads to his weekly routine. Not only did his blood pressure improve, but he noticed less eye strain when reading in the evenings. These are the kinds of small but powerful changes that accumulate over time. So I often ask my patients, if your eyes could warn you about your heart health, would you listen? In truth, they already do. Eye exams frequently reveal blood pressure problems long before other symptoms appear. Swiss chard may look like just another leafy green, but it is a quiet protector, supporting healthy circulation, easing strain on your eyes, and helping you see more clearly as the years go by. Leafy green number 5, Arugula, the peppery protector. Arugula may not enjoy the same fame as kale or spinach, but it truly deserves a spot on every senior's plate. Its peppery bite makes it distinctive, but what really sets arugula apart are its glucosinolates, sulfur-containing compounds that have strong anti-inflammatory effects at the cellular level. For aging eyes, this matters more than most people realize. Chronic inflammation acts like gasoline on a fire, accelerating nearly every eye disease we fear most: macular degeneration, cataracts, glaucoma, even diabetic retinopathy. If oxidative stress is the spark that ignites damage, inflammation is what allows it to spread and grow. Arugula also delivers vitamin K and folate, nutrients that support healthy circulation and help reduce homocysteine, a compound linked not only to heart disease, but also to retinal damage. High homocysteine levels have been associated with a greater risk of age-related macular degeneration in older adults. By lowering this marker through diet, arugula helps create a healthier internal environment for your eyes and your cardiovascular system. I think of a patient named Margaret, age 70, who admitted she always dismissed leafy greens as rabbit food. She laughed about it until her daughter prepared a salad of arugula tossed with walnuts, pears, and a drizzle of balsamic vinegar. To her surprise, she loved it. Over the next few months, she began eating arugula regularly and noticed a real difference. Her eyes felt less dry, and she reported fewer of those frustrating floaters drifting across her vision. Small improvements, yes, but together they made her feel more comfortable and confident. Science echoes these experiences. A study published in Nutrition and Metabolism highlighted that diets rich in cruciferous vegetables, including arugula, were linked to lower systemic inflammation and improved vascular health. Another paper from the Journal of Nutrition found that seniors who regularly consumed leafy greens high in folate had a reduced risk of vision decline compared to those with low intake. These aren't abstract numbers. They are real outcomes that affect daily life, like reading a book without irritation or driving without constant distraction from visual disturbances. I've seen others benefit as well. One of my patients in his late 60s added arugula to his sandwiches a few times a week instead of lettuce. Within months, his eye doctor noted better circulation in his retina during a routine exam, and he himself reported feeling more alert with less eye fatigue at the end of the day. So let me ask you, if something as simple as swapping out ordinary lettuce for peppery arugula could help protect your vision, ease inflammation, and even make your meals more flavorful, isn't that worth considering? In eye health, small victories truly add up, and arugula is one of those quiet protectors that can make a meaningful difference over time. Leafy green number 6, romaine lettuce, the overlooked ally. Romaine lettuce is often dismissed as nothing more than a bland salad base, but it is far more valuable than most people realize, especially for older adults. This crisp, refreshing green is rich in beta-carotene, a precursor of vitamin A, which is vital for retinal health and night vision. Vitamin A deficiency, even when mild, can make it harder for the eyes to adapt to dim light and may increase the risk of age-related vision problems. What makes romaine even more helpful is its high water content, over 90%. For seniors who struggle with dry eyes, one of the most common complaints after 60, hydration is just as important as antioxidants and vitamins. Scientific evidence reinforces its benefits. A study published in the British Journal of Nutrition found that seniors with higher beta-carotene intake had a 40% lower risk of developing severe cataracts compared to those with low intake. Another long-term study from Harvard followed over 50,000 women and found that diets rich in beta-carotene and vitamin A significantly reduced the risk of vision loss from both cataracts and macular degeneration. Romaine may not deliver the concentration of nutrients found in kale or collards, but what it offers is steady, everyday protection when it becomes part of a regular diet. I recall a patient named Thomas, age 75, who came to me complaining of frequent eye irritation and dryness, especially in the evenings. He wasn't eating many vegetables, and when I suggested starting with something simple like romaine salads, he laughed and said, "Doc, that's rabbit food." Still, he agreed to try. Within a few weeks of eating romaine with olive oil, avocado, and a sprinkle of cheese, he noticed his eyes felt less gritty, and reading at night was more comfortable. His story reminded me that sometimes the simplest foods make the most practical difference. Romaine is also an easy entry point for people who aren't used to eating many leafy greens. Unlike kale or arugula, which can taste bitter or peppery, romaine has a mild flavor and crisp texture that pairs well with almost anything. Tossed with olive oil, nuts, or even lean protein like grilled chicken, it becomes a satisfying meal while delivering eye-protective nutrients. So let me pose a question. If something as simple as adding a bowl of Romaine to your daily routine could lower your risk of cataracts, ease dry eyes, and keep your vision steady as you age, why not take advantage of it? Too often we underestimate the basics, but in medicine I've learned that consistency is often more powerful than intensity. Romaine lettuce may be overlooked, but when eaten regularly, it becomes a quiet ally for your vision and your overall health. So let's pull it all together. Vision loss after 60 isn't just old age catching up with you. It's oxidative stress, inflammation, high blood pressure, and nutritional gaps that quietly chip away at your eyesight year after year. The good news is you are not powerless. By adding these 6 leafy greens into your weekly routine, kale, spinach, collard greens, Swiss chard, arugula, and yes, even romaine, you give your eyes the very tools they need to fight back. Each one brings something unique to the table, from boosting circulation to protecting the macula, to preventing cataracts and easing dry eyes. I've seen patients transform their health by making small, consistent changes, and you can too. Imagine being able to keep reading, driving, and seeing your loved ones' faces clearly, simply because you chose to nourish your eyes with the right foods. Sometimes the strongest medicine doesn't come from a prescription, it comes from your plate. Now, if this video gave you something valuable, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share it with a friend who could use the advice, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Every click helps us keep bringing you science-based, practical health tips that make a real difference in life after 60. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, you have more control over your health than you might think. Take care of your eyes, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.